Most people believe the mind must be changed. They search for techniques, affirmations, quick fixes, and dramatic breakthroughs. They want to replace who they are with someone better, stronger, calmer, more confident. This desire itself becomes the first obstacle. The mind does not respond well to force. When you try to change it, it resists. When you judge it, it tightens. When you demand instant transformation, it becomes unstable. The mind is not a broken object waiting to be repaired. It is a system that responds to training. Training is different from change. Change is emotional and impatient. Training is calm and repetitive. Change wants results now. Training accepts results later. In Shaolin understanding, nothing is transformed overnight by desire alone. Only what is practiced daily becomes natural. The mind follows the same law as the body. If you train the body poorly, it becomes weak. If you train it with discipline, it becomes strong. The mind is no different. Every thought you repeat is a repetition in training. Every reaction you allow is a reinforcement. Every moment of unconscious behavior is a lesson you are teaching yourself without realizing it. The mind learns constantly whether you guide it or not. This is why people feel stuck. They believe nothing is happening, but in reality, the same patterns are being trained again and again. Anxiety is trained. Fear is trained. Overthinking is trained. Doubt is trained through repetition, not through intention. When someone says, "This is just how my mind is," what they are really saying is, "This is how my mind has been trained." No mind is born restless. No mind is born fearful of its own thoughts. These tendencies are conditioned through years of reaction, avoidance, and unconscious habit. To undo them, you do not fight them. You replace the training. Training requires structure. Without structure, the mind wanders. A wandering mind is not free, it is uncontrolled. Freedom comes from mastery, not from indulgence. When your day has no rhythm, your mind loses direction. When you wake up at different times, consume random information, react emotionally to everything, and never sit in silence, the mind learns instability as its baseline. Then you wonder why it cannot focus. The first step in training the mind is consistency. Doing the same simple practices daily teaches the mind reliability. Waking up at the same time, sitting in silence, breathing consciously, moving the body with intention. These acts seem small, but they communicate authority to the mind. They tell the mind that it is not in charge. The mind does not like this at first. It will resist. Resistance is not failure, it is proof that training has begun. Many people stop when resistance appears. They think something is wrong. In truth, resistance is the untrained mind struggling against discipline. Just as muscles shake when first held under tension, the mind becomes restless when held in stillness. If you escape the moment discomfort arises, you train avoidance. If you remain, you train endurance. Training the mind also requires observation without judgment. The moment you label a thought as bad, you strengthen it. Judgment gives thoughts energy. Observation removes fuel. When a thought arises and you simply notice it without following or rejecting it, the mind learns neutrality. Over time, thoughts lose intensity. Not because they are suppressed, but because they are no longer rewarded with attention. This is why silence is essential. Silence is not the absence of sound, it is the absence of engagement. When you sit in silence, the mind reveals its habits. You see how quickly it jumps, how often it complains, how easily it creates stories. This is not something to be ashamed of. This is data. Training begins with awareness. You cannot train what you refuse to see. Discipline is misunderstood as punishment. True discipline is clarity. It removes choice fatigue. When your practices are non-negotiable, the mind stops arguing. Arguing wastes energy. A trained mind conserves energy. It moves directly without internal conflict. This is why monks appear calm even under pressure. Their minds have been trained to respond, not react. Training also involves the body. The body anchors the mind. When the body is weak, the mind becomes fragile. When the body is stable, the mind follows. Holding uncomfortable postures, breathing through strain, maintaining balance under pressure. All of this teaches the mind patience. The mind learns that discomfort is survivable. Fear decreases when the mind realizes it does not need to escape every sensation. People often ask how long it takes to train the mind. This question comes from impatience. Training has no finish line. The moment you think you are done, regression begins. A trained mind is maintained, not achieved. Like sharpening a blade, it requires regular attention. Skipping practice does not destroy progress immediately, but inconsistency slowly dulls awareness. The mind you want is not a different mind. It is the same mind under better guidance. Strength replaces chaos when repetition replaces impulse. Calm replaces anxiety when presence replaces distraction. Focus replaces confusion when discipline replaces indulgence. This is not transformation through force, but alignment through training. The mind becomes what it practices, and it practices what you allow every moment you are awake, in every small decision you think does not matter. Many people misunderstand action. They believe action is movement, noise, and constant doing. They believe success is measured by how busy they are, by the number of tasks completed, the emails sent, the meetings attended, the messages answered. The modern mind equates motion with progress. Yet, true action, the kind that produces lasting results, is born from stillness. Stillness is not passivity. Stillness is not inaction. Stillness is preparation, clarity, and alignment. Without it, action becomes scattered, reactive, and often counterproductive. The principle of stillness before action has been understood by warriors, monks, and sages for centuries. They know that the mind cannot operate efficiently when it is fragmented. Every thought, every emotion, every impulse moves the body towards some response. When you act without stillness, you act out of reaction, not intention. You respond to fear, desire, expectation, or habit. You react to noise outside and chaos inside grows. Your actions multiply confusion instead of creating order. Stillness is the soil in which clarity grows. The mind, when still, reveals patterns that were invisible amidst distraction. In movement, you cannot see clearly. In conversation, you cannot hear truth. In constant doing, you cannot understand what is necessary and what is unnecessary. Sitting quietly, breathing slowly, observing the body and mind allows the noise to settle. Thoughts that once screamed for attention become faint. The mind aligns with the present moment. Awareness expands. Action, when it comes, flows naturally from clarity, not compulsion. People resist stillness because it exposes the mind. In stillness, you meet the unrest you usually avoid. Anxiety, restlessness, irritation, boredom, they all surface. Most flee this encounter by checking their phones, making plans, or filling the silence with distractions. Yet, avoidance only prolongs unrest. Facing stillness directly is the training itself. By sitting quietly, observing without judgment, you teach the mind endurance. You teach the mind that discomfort is temporary. You teach the mind that clarity is available when you stop chasing illusions. The second aspect of stillness is observation. Stillness is not simply being quiet, it is observing without interference. Watch your thoughts arise. Watch your emotions fluctuate. Watch impulses pass through without acting on them. Notice how quickly the mind wants to jump to conclusions, to blame, to worry, to crave. This is the mind's habit, movement, and reaction. By witnessing it without participation, you establish distance between self and thought. This distance is the first step toward mastery. When action follows stillness, it becomes precise. Think of a martial artist. Before a strike, they do not rush forward recklessly. They stand, breathe, align their posture, observe the opponent, feel the environment. Only then do they move. The strike is effortless, effective, and powerful because preparation preceded it. Action without preparation is wasted energy. The mind, when trained to stillness, produces action that is decisive, calm, and unshakable. Stillness also teaches timing. The modern mind struggles with impatience. It believes the first idea that appears must be executed immediately. But timing is critical. Impulsive action often leads to error, regret, or missed opportunities. By practicing stillness, the mind learns the rhythm of right timing. Thoughts are filtered through awareness. Impulses are tested against presence. Decisions emerge naturally from observation rather than coercion. In this way, action becomes intelligent rather than frantic. Moreover, stillness strengthens resilience. When you cultivate the ability to pause, you gain the capacity to remain composed under pressure. Challenges do not force reaction, because reaction has already been trained. The mind that has practiced stillness can endure crisis without collapsing. It can assess the situation, understand the variables, and respond with precision. It does not act blindly. It does not panic. It acts with intention. Stillness before action also deepens creativity. In movement alone, the mind recycles the same ideas. It reacts to past patterns, habits, and conditioning. Stillness allows the unconscious mind to surface solutions. When the mind is silent, connections are made that are impossible in frantic doing. The mind sees what it could not see, hears what it could not hear, and senses what it could not feel amidst constant distraction. Great insight emerges not from busyness, but from the calm that precedes it. Training in stillness requires patience. Sitting quietly does not feel productive at first. Thoughts become louder. Restlessness tempts you to abandon the practice. Yet each moment of persistence strengthens the mind. You teach the mind restraint, endurance, and trust. You show it that clarity is available, that impulsive reactions are optional, that peace is achievable even when the body demands movement. In these moments, you are rewiring neural pathways, creating a foundation upon which every future action will be steadier, sharper, and more intentional. Stillness is also the antidote to overstimulation. In a world of endless information, constant alerts, and relentless social noise, the mind loses its ability to focus. Multitasking replaces depth with superficiality. Restlessness replaces patience. Impulse replaces strategy. By embracing stillness, you reclaim sovereignty over your mind. You choose what deserves attention. You discard what does not. You align your energy with purpose rather than distraction. Finally, stillness is not a one-time practice. It is a state that informs every action. When you train the mind to pause before reacting, you carry that presence into movement, speech, and thought. You act with awareness in every task, every interaction, every decision. Action becomes not a response to chaos, but a natural extension of calm. Decisions are sharper, emotions steadier, and energy more sustainable. The world may call for constant doing, but the secret of mastery lies in the pause. The mind that rushes never learns the rhythm of its own power. The mind that sits in quiet knows timing, clarity, and precision. When you integrate stillness before action, you are no longer driven by impulse, fear, or habit. Every action, from the smallest gesture to the largest endeavor, becomes purposeful, intentional, and aligned with the deeper currents of awareness. The mind and body are inseparable, yet most people treat them as separate entities. They believe that controlling the mind comes from thought alone, from willpower, from repetition of affirmations or visualization. They sit, they think, they wish, and they hope the mind will obey. But the mind is not a slave to wishful thinking. The mind is deeply tied to the body. It is born, shaped, and reinforced through bodily habits. To control the mind, you must first command the body. The body is the gateway. The mind follows the signals it receives from it. When the body is chaotic, the mind is chaotic. When the body is restless, the mind cannot find stillness. When the body is weak, the mind becomes timid. Most people spend years training only the mind, reading, analyzing, strategizing, while neglecting the physical vessel that houses it. This imbalance creates tension, distraction, and mental fatigue. The body carries the mind's resistance. The body stores anxiety, fear, and frustration. Until the body is disciplined, the mind cannot reach clarity. Control over the body begins with awareness. Many people walk through life unaware of their posture, their breathing, their muscle tension, or their patterns of movement. Awareness is the first step toward mastery. Observe how you sit, stand, and move. Notice how the body reacts to stress, discomfort, and challenge. These physical habits are the silent teachers of the mind. If you allow slouching, shallow breathing, fidgeting, or avoidance, the mind internalizes these signals as permission to remain scattered, anxious, and weak. Training the body is not about extreme exercise or flashy displays of strength. It is about discipline, consistency, and alignment. Simple controlled movements, maintained with focus, reshape both body and mind. Shaolin monks understood this long before modern science began to explain it. Every posture, every stance, every slow and deliberate motion trains the mind in patience, resilience, and awareness. The body becomes the instrument through which the mind learns endurance. Each repetition reinforces focus. Each breath under tension teaches composure. Each hold in discomfort teaches the mind that suffering is not a signal to flee, but a condition to be mastered. Breath is central to commanding the mind through the body. Many ignore breathing or allow it to be shallow and irregular, unaware that the rhythm of breath dictates the rhythm of thought. Anxiety arises not in thought alone, but in the body's refusal to relax. Shallow breathing tightens the chest, contracts the diaphragm, and signals danger to the brain. By practicing controlled deep breathing, you signal safety to the nervous system. Calmness rises naturally. Impulse loses urgency. The mind, fed by disciplined breathing, becomes sharper, steadier, and capable of clarity under pressure. Discipline of the body also teaches restraint. When the body moves recklessly, the mind mirrors that impulsiveness. When the body is trained to maintain posture, balance, and endurance under strain, the mind learns that it can withstand discomfort without panic. In practicing physical control, you teach the mind that strength comes from patience, precision, and presence, not from force or reaction. Each physical challenge becomes a rehearsal for mental mastery. The mind internalizes the lesson that it does not need to chase, push, or resist to succeed. Control over the body also builds focus. When you are fully aware of every movement, how the feet press against the floor, how the hands align, how the spine supports the posture, your attention becomes singular. Distraction fades. The mind's natural tendency to wander diminishes. Physical awareness is concentration made tangible. The mind learns to act with deliberation because the body has practiced restraint. Thoughts become clear, decisions precise, and reactions measured. Moreover, controlling the body teaches the mind to endure discomfort. Pain, fatigue, and strain are inevitable, but the way the body is trained dictates how the mind experiences them. If the body collapses at the first sign of difficulty, the mind perceives weakness, fear, and limitation. If the body holds steady, the mind registers resilience, strength, and possibility. Endurance is not merely physical, it is mental. By commanding the body in moments of tension, the mind rewires itself to remain composed under pressure. Even emotions are influenced by the body. Posture, breath, and movement affect emotional states more profoundly than most realize. Slumped posture fosters sadness, anxiety, and self-doubt. Open, upright posture encourages confidence, courage, and calm. Controlled movement communicates stability to the nervous system. By practicing deliberate gestures, deliberate stances, and deliberate pacing, the mind aligns with a state of readiness, awareness, and composure. The body becomes a teacher of emotional regulation, instructing the mind without words, without persuasion, without effort. The principle of controlling the body to command the mind extends beyond formal practice. Every action in daily life, walking, lifting, sitting, eating, speaking, offers an opportunity for training. Mindless habits create a weak mind. Mindful habits strengthen it. The body communicates to the mind continuously. When you chew hurriedly, the mind absorbs impatience. When you sit slouched, the mind absorbs tension. When you move with awareness, even in simple tasks, the mind internalizes composure. Each moment becomes a lesson in mastery. Commanding the mind through the body is also a lesson in presence. The body is always here, the mind often is not. The mind drifts into the past or the future, into worry, regret, or desire. The body anchors the mind in reality. By focusing on bodily sensations, breath, posture, and motion, the mind returns to the present. Presence is the foundation of awareness, focus, and action. By mastering the body, the mind naturally aligns with the present moment, capable of responding intelligently, decisively, and with clarity rather than reaction. The mind, when trained through the body, learns efficiency. Energy is no longer wasted on unnecessary thought, emotion, or impulse. Strength, calm, and focus are cultivated through repetition, awareness, and discipline. The body becomes a mirror of the mind state, and through physical mastery, the mind is elevated. Chaos in thought is replaced by order. Restlessness is replaced by endurance. Confusion is replaced by clarity. Impulse is replaced by intention. Each breath, each posture, each deliberate motion teaches the mind something that words alone cannot convey. The mind is inseparable from the body. Mastery of one leads inevitably to mastery of the other. Training the body is not separate from training the mind. It is the very path to commanding it, shaping it, and ultimately realizing the power that lies dormant in the union of awareness, discipline, and presence. The modern world is a storm of noise. Every moment is filled with messages, alerts, opinions, and distractions. The mind is constantly bombarded with information, much of it unnecessary, repetitive, or misleading. People believe that knowledge comes from consuming more, that clarity comes from more input. Yet, the opposite is true. Noise is the veil that hides truth. To hear truth, to perceive what is real, one must first detach from noise. This detachment is not avoidance. It is a conscious step toward clarity, a withdrawal from the chaos that clouds perception. Noise is not only external, it lives inside the mind as well. Thoughts, memories, fears, and desires create an internal chatter that competes with awareness. Most people are unaware of the level of noise within themselves. Anxiety, regret, expectation, and impulse generate mental static that drowns out insight. The mind becomes accustomed to constant stimulation, mistaking distraction for action, activity for progress. Truth cannot be heard in this state. Truth requires quiet attention and a mind unclouded by the clamor of habit and emotion. Detachment from noise begins with observation. Observe the sources of distraction in your life. Notice how your attention is hijacked by notifications, news, social media, and the opinions of others. Notice how your own thoughts jump, loop, and chatter without pause. Awareness of noise is the first step in removing it. Without observation, detachment is impossible. The mind cannot release what it does not recognize. The second step is restraint. Detachment is an act of self-discipline. It is the refusal to engage with every impulse. It is the refusal to react automatically. When you silence the phone, turn off unnecessary alerts, and limit exposure to constant conversation, you are not hiding from reality. You are creating a space in which truth can emerge. Every moment spent in reaction to noise trains the mind in distraction. Every moment spent in restraint trains the mind in focus, patience, and discernment. Stillness is inseparable from detachment. When external noise is removed, internal noise becomes more apparent. Fear, desire, regret, and longing rise to the surface. This is not weakness. It is the process of purification. The mind accustomed to clutter must face its patterns before clarity emerges. In silence, thoughts are revealed as habitual, emotional, or reactive. By observing them without attachment, the mind begins to untangle from old conditioning. Each moment of quiet strengthens the ability to distinguish reality from illusion. Detachment from noise also allows for discernment. In constant distraction, the mind cannot differentiate between what matters and what does not. Opinions are mistaken for truth. Urgency is mistaken for importance. Reaction is mistaken for action. By removing noise, the mind gains perspective. Patterns become visible. Priorities become clear. Decisions are no longer impulsive but informed. The voice of truth, subtle and patient, can finally be heard amidst the absence of clutter. The process of detachment requires courage. The mind is addicted to stimulation. Silence feels uncomfortable, empty, or threatening at first. In early moments of quiet, the mind may panic, attempting to escape through thinking, fantasizing, or planning. This is the mind testing its limits. Each time you resist the impulse to fill silence with noise, you strengthen awareness. You teach the mind that insight is found not in reaction but in observation. The discomfort is temporary and the clarity that emerges is lasting. Physical detachment amplifies mental detachment. Retreating from constant environments of noise, crowds, bustling streets, relentless workspaces gives the mind room to breathe. A walk alone in nature, a moment without music, or a period without conversation allows the senses to rest and the mind to recalibrate. The nervous system, overstimulated for so long, begins to normalize. The mind learns to distinguish between signals worth attention and those that are distractions. Detachment also cultivates patience. In noise, the mind seeks instant answers, instant gratification, and instant resolution. Truth does not operate on demand. It reveals itself to those who wait, to those who observe, and to those who have removed interference. The mind trained in detachment can sit with questions without rushing toward false conclusions. It can allow answers to emerge naturally from observation, experience, and reflection. This patience becomes the foundation for wisdom, insight, and clear judgment. Emotion is clarified through detachment. Noise, especially emotional noise, clouds perception. Gossip, opinion, and reactive communication amplify fear, envy, and desire. By withdrawing from this, the mind stabilizes. Emotional intensity is not suppressed but understood. Responses are measured rather than impulsive. Emotions become tools for insight rather than chains of reaction. Each moment of detachment strengthens emotional intelligence, awareness, and composure. Detachment does not mean isolation. It does not mean disconnection from life or responsibility. It means prioritizing what deserves attention and letting go of what does not. It is a conscious boundary between the mind and unnecessary influence. It is a discipline that protects clarity. By detaching, the mind creates space to hear the subtle, quiet, and essential truths that are otherwise drowned out by clamor. Daily practice of detachment compounds its effect. Even brief periods of silence, reflection, or solitary presence train the mind to differentiate between noise and truth. Over time, the mind becomes adept at moving through the world without being impelled by distraction. Attention becomes voluntary. Presence becomes constant. Thought becomes deliberate. Through detachment, the mind reclaims sovereignty over perception and judgment. Detachment is also a shield against manipulation. In a world where messages are constant and persuasive, the mind must learn to filter, to question, and to pause. When the mind is trained in detachment, it does not absorb every opinion, advertisement, or trend. It learns to listen selectively, respond consciously, and act with clarity. Noise loses its control over judgment, and truth becomes the guide rather than reaction or habit. By detaching from noise, you do not escape reality, you penetrate it. The mind, free from clutter, perceives subtleties that were previously invisible. The rhythm of events, the patterns of behavior, and the essence of situations become clear. Detachment sharpens the senses, clarifies thought, and deepens awareness. The mind learns to operate from understanding rather than reaction, from observation rather than impulse, from insight rather than habit. Detachment is a practice, not a destination. Every day presents new noise, new distraction, new emotional turbulence. The mind that has learned to detach can navigate this with clarity and precision. Silence becomes not the absence of life, but the presence of understanding. Awareness grows. Focus deepens. Action becomes deliberate, intelligent, and aligned with truth. Truth, like water beneath sediment, is always present. Noise obscures it. Reaction buries it. Only by stepping back, creating distance, and detaching can the mind see clearly, hear accurately, and act wisely. Most people spend their lives believing that progress is measured by time alone. They assume that years of effort, repetition, and activity automatically lead to mastery, insight, or transformation. They believe that showing up, doing tasks, and checking boxes accumulates into growth. Yet years of unfocused effort often produce little more than fatigue, frustration, and false achievement. The mind, left untrained, drifts. The body, left unaligned, acts mechanically. Action without presence is motion without direction, and time alone cannot correct what attention has ignored. One day of total presence, however, can be more transformative than a lifetime of distraction. Presence is not multitasking. Presence is not partial attention or divided focus. It is the complete engagement of mind, body, and awareness in the moment. When you are fully present, every action becomes deliberate, every perception becomes precise, and every thought aligns with reality. One day of this total alignment rewires neural pathways, establishes clarity, and instills discipline in a way that years of routine, scattered effort cannot. The power of presence lies in its intensity, its depth, and its singularity. Consider how most people operate. They rush through tasks, thinking about the next item on the list, replaying conversations in their minds, or worrying about outcomes they cannot control. Even when learning or practicing, they divide attention between effort and distraction. They perform actions, but their awareness is absent. Energy is spent, but consciousness is not engaged. Progress appears slow because the mind has never truly been invested in the task. Focus is diluted. The subtleties of perception are missed. Habits solidify not through mastery, but through repetition without awareness. Total presence eliminates this gap. One day of complete engagement changes the mind because attention is concentrated fully. It is like a magnifying glass focusing sunlight on a single point. Heat, energy, and transformation are immediate. Every gesture, every breath, every thought becomes a form of practice. The mind learns patterns it previously ignored. The body aligns with intent it previously resisted. Perception sharpens. Understanding deepens. Awareness expands. This is why a single day of disciplined, focused practice can surpass years of distracted effort. The quality of engagement outweighs the quantity of time. The first step in cultivating total presence is stillness. Presence cannot be forced while the mind is scattered. Before action, before thought, before planning, the mind must pause. In that pause, awareness gathers itself. Thoughts settle like sediment in water. Emotional turbulence comes. Only from this center of stillness can presence radiate outward into every activity. When the mind is anchored in stillness, the body follows. Movements become intentional, reactions measured, and focus continuous. Breath is the bridge between body and mind in this practice. Conscious breathing anchors attention. Every inhale, every exhale becomes a reminder to return to the present. The body becomes a vessel for awareness, and the mind, once scattered, is pulled into alignment. Breathing deeply and fully while observing each moment without judgment transforms ordinary perception into heightened clarity. Presence is cultivated not by force, but by careful attention to the rhythm of life unfolding in real time. Every action, no matter how mundane, becomes meaningful when performed with total presence. Eating, walking, cleaning, speaking, or listening, each moment is an opportunity to engage fully. By treating small actions as sacred practice, the mind rewires itself to value focus, patience, and discipline. The brain begins to recognize patterns, to anticipate outcomes intelligently, and to filter distraction automatically. This one day of concentrated practice trains neural circuits far faster than repeated half-hearted effort over months or years. Emotional engagement is also sharpened through total presence. People often experience life as a blur of feelings, reacting instinctively to stimuli without clarity. In total presence, emotions are observed rather than absorbed. Anger is seen, not expressed blindly. Fear is noted, not acted upon impulsively. Desire is recognized, not indulged unconsciously. By observing the mind in real time without judgment or distraction, one gains mastery over reactions that usually govern behavior unconsciously. One day of such conscious observation can produce profound shifts in emotional intelligence that years of unfocused effort rarely achieve. Time becomes irrelevant in this practice. The world measures progress in years, hours, or minutes, but presence operates on intensity. Depth of attention collapses the distance between experience and understanding. One day fully invested in awareness can teach lessons that years of absent-minded repetition fail to convey. When the mind is present, it absorbs what is essential, discards what is irrelevant, and integrates insight immediately. Knowledge becomes wisdom. Habit becomes skill. Effort becomes power. Even the simplest routines, when executed with total presence, become transformative. Walking down a corridor, observing each step, the pressure of the feet, the movement of the legs, the alignment of the spine. This is practice. Eating a meal slowly, tasting every flavor, feeling every texture, observing every sensation. This is practice. Cleaning a space meticulously, noticing the angle of every movement, the subtle energy in the hands. This is practice. Each moment, if attended to fully, becomes a vehicle for rewiring perception, thought, and action. The mind, trained in presence, begins to recognize the difference between distraction and reality. It notices when attention drifts, when impulse threatens to dominate, when habit overrides conscious choice. Awareness becomes automatic. Focus becomes sustainable. The brain, once scattered, learns precision. Decisions become deliberate. Action becomes intentional. Energy becomes efficient. Presence acts as a catalyst that compresses the effects of years of unfocused effort into a single, concentrated experience. Discipline is cultivated through persistence in presence. The mind, initially restless, resists still engagement. It wants stimulation, novelty, and avoidance of discomfort. Yet, persistence in one day of total focus teaches endurance. The mind learns that it can remain steady even when challenges arise. Thoughts can be observed without control. Emotions can be experienced without distraction. Action can be deliberate without haste. Through this one day of rigorous awareness, the foundation of mastery is laid, far surpassing the results of repeated but unfocused activity over long periods. Presence also enhances perception of reality. In distracted effort, the mind filters, ignores, or misinterprets information. In total presence, every detail is accessible. Subtle cues are noticed. Patterns are detected. Connections become clear. Learning accelerates because attention is fully applied. Memory is strengthened because experience is fully encoded. Understanding deepens because observation is complete. One day fully devoted to this level of awareness can teach lessons that years of passive experience could never provide. Through one day of total presence, the mind, body, and awareness align. Each action, each thought, each perception becomes a tool for growth. The nervous system calibrates itself. Neural pathways reinforce clarity. Emotional regulation strengthens. Insight emerges naturally. Energy consolidates. Habits shift. Perspective broadens. The transformative power of presence lies in its singularity. Years of scattered effort can accumulate into noise, habit, and confusion. One day of total engagement cuts through the clutter, rewires perception, and establishes a foundation of awareness, discipline, and clarity. In this concentrated practice, the mind learns what it has ignored, the body learns what it has resisted, and consciousness learns how to operate with full efficiency, precision, and insight. Suffering is unavoidable. It manifests in countless forms: physical pain, emotional loss, disappointment, rejection, failure, fear, uncertainty. Yet most people spend their lives trying to avoid it. They chase comfort, distraction, and reassurance, believing that a life without suffering is the life worth living. They resist, fight, distract, or deny their pain, thinking that avoidance is strength. This resistance, however, transforms suffering from a transient experience into a lasting prison. When resisted, suffering enslaves the mind, dictates behavior, and clouds perception. It lingers, hidden but potent, shaping choices, reactions, and emotions without awareness. The first truth is that suffering has a purpose, but only when observed. When you turn toward it, when you meet it directly without judgment, it becomes a teacher. Pain reveals patterns you cannot see in comfort. It exposes weaknesses, habits, fears, and attachments that have silently governed your life. Emotional suffering, for example, shows where the mind clings to what is no longer available. Physical suffering reveals limitations of endurance, strength, and attention. Disappointment teaches the mind about expectation, desire, and alignment. Fear instructs the mind on boundaries, caution, and courage. In all its forms, suffering is raw data, information that illuminates the truth about self, situation, and circumstance. Observation is the key to transformation. To resist suffering is to look away. To observe suffering is to confront it without attachment. This does not mean passivity or indulgence in pain. It does not mean letting suffering control behavior. Observation is presence. It is witnessing the experience fully while maintaining awareness. The mind notes the sensations, the emotions, the impulses, and the thoughts that arise without labeling them as good or bad. By doing so, the mind steps out of automatic reaction and enters conscious understanding. Each moment of observation trains the mind to respond rather than react, to learn rather than flee. Resistance, by contrast, strengthens suffering. When you deny pain, suppress emotion, or distract yourself from reality, you give suffering the power to accumulate beneath the surface. Anxiety builds, fear festers, frustration solidifies into rigidity. The mind cannot escape its own avoidance. Resistance feeds itself. It creates loops of self-deception where suffering is both denied and amplified simultaneously. The longer the mind fights, the longer suffering persists. Avoidance may feel like relief in the short term, but it is a trap. Like a river dammed, pressure grows, energy stagnates, and the flow of understanding is blocked. Suffering is also deeply personal. No one can experience it for you. The temptation to seek comfort from others is natural, yet ultimate mastery comes from self-observation. Guidance, advice, and reassurance may soften the edges of pain, but they cannot transform it. Only direct engagement, attention, awareness, and acceptance can convert suffering into insight. The moment the mind watches pain without attachment, the moment the body remains steady in discomfort, the mind begins to extract lessons. What once was torment becomes insight. What once was resistance becomes clarity. The practice of observing suffering requires courage. Pain is uncomfortable, frightening, and unpredictable. The mind instinctively seeks escape. Yet courage is not absence of fear. It is presence with fear. It is sitting with discomfort, acknowledging it, and letting it speak. Each experience of suffering becomes an opportunity for growth when approached with awareness. Each moment of conscious engagement rewires the nervous system, strengthens endurance, and cultivates understanding. The body and mind learn resilience not by avoiding strain, but by standing firmly within it. Suffering also teaches patience. The mind conditioned by avoidance expects instant resolution. Discomfort should end immediately. Pain should vanish on demand. Reality rarely conforms to these expectations. Observing suffering teaches the mind to wait, to endure, and to observe. Time becomes a tool rather than a burden. Patience is forged in the crucible of discomfort. The mind learns that suffering is transient when met directly, that its intensity rises and falls, and that observation allows energy to remain intact rather than scattered in futile resistance. Emotional suffering, when observed, becomes a mirror. It reflects attachment, expectation, and desire. It reveals the places where the mind has allowed identity, pride, or habit to dominate perception. Each encounter is a lesson in impermanence. Each experience reveals patterns that unconsciously shape choices. By observing these reflections, the mind gains insight into behavior, impulse, and reaction. Emotional intelligence emerges from suffering only when it is witnessed fully rather than suppressed. Physical suffering follows the same principle. Pain signals weakness, misalignment, or overextension. Resistance often magnifies the experience. Fighting, tensing, and bracing intensify discomfort. Observation, however, allows the body to communicate truth. When pain is observed with awareness, the mind interprets the signal correctly. Adjustment, alignment, and endurance become possible. Strength develops not in avoidance of discomfort, but in measured response to it. The body trains the mind to tolerate strain, to remain calm, and to act with clarity under pressure. Suffering, observed without resistance, also fosters discernment. The mind learns to differentiate between what is necessary and what is habitual. It distinguishes between what is fleeting and what is structural. It understands cause and effect, action and consequence, impulse and choice. Insight emerges because the mind is no longer distracted by denial, fear, or blame. Clarity arises naturally when attention rests fully on experience rather than reaction. Lessons embedded in suffering become visible, actionable, and transformative. Resistance, in contrast, creates captivity. The mind imprisoned by denial, distraction, and avoidance lives in perpetual unrest. Anxiety, fear, and tension accumulate like chains. Thoughts repeat endlessly, emotions flare unpredictably, and energy is scattered into futile effort. Suffering, when resisted, gains control of life without revealing its wisdom. The mind confuses the avoidance with mastery, the distraction with comfort, and the denial with strength. It becomes a prison built not of walls, but of unacknowledged pain and unattended lessons. Suffering is also a mirror of attachment. Resistance emerges from the desire for control, comfort, or permanence. Observation emerges from surrender, acceptance, and curiosity. By observing suffering, the mind loosens its grasp on what cannot be controlled. It recognizes impermanence. It accepts the flow of life without grasping, pushing, or forcing. This perspective turns the experience of suffering from punishment into guidance, from obstacle into teacher, from burden into opportunity. By observing suffering fully, every moment becomes an opportunity for insight. Pain becomes a signal, a message, a teacher that instructs through clarity rather than force. Emotional, physical, and existential suffering all contain hidden wisdom, accessible only when the mind steps aside from resistance. Each encounter trains awareness, cultivates patience, develops resilience, and deepens understanding. Suffering, therefore, is dual in nature. Left unobserved, resisted, or denied, it becomes a prison. It confines the mind, enslaves energy, and distorts perception. Observed fully, it becomes a teacher. It illuminates patterns, reveals truth, and cultivates mastery. Each moment of attention transforms pain into insight, discomfort into discipline, and adversity into growth. The art of observing suffering is a lifelong practice. Each challenge, each moment of pain, offers the opportunity to witness rather than flee. Through conscious observation, the mind learns endurance, clarity, and understanding. The body learns patience, alignment, and strength. The heart learns resilience, acceptance, and perspective. In this way, suffering ceases to be merely an obstacle. It becomes the path itself, the teacher that guides the mind toward awareness, the mirror that reveals truth, and the crucible in which wisdom is forged. Each instance of pain, when observed, becomes a stepping stone for insight, mastery, and liberation.